Godspeed, You Black Emperor, the name of the song The Dead Flag Blues. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, the U.S. strategy in Afghanistan is back in the news just ahead of the vice presidential debate tonight. The British ambassador to Afghanistan has been quoted in a French newspaper as saying that the American military strategy in that country is, quote, destined to fail. Ambassador Sherard Cowper-Cole's critical comments about a NATO operation in Afghanistan were part of a leaked memo from a French diplomat. He also said, quote, the coalition presence, particularly the military presence, is part of the problem, not the solution. The British ambassador's leaked statements were published just as the top U.S. commander in Afghanistan called for 3 additional combat brigades, that is, over 10,000 soldiers, to be immediately deployed to Kabul. General David McKiernan told reporters in Washington, D.C. Wednesday that Americans were facing a tough fight in Afghanistan that, quote, might get worse before it gets better.
As the U.S.-led wars in the Middle East show no sign of abating, we turn now to a man who's chronicled 11 major wars in this part of the world and shows no sign of abating himself. Robert Fisk is Britain's most celebrated foreign correspondent, has borne witness to countless tragedies in the Middle East for over 3 decades. Robert Fisk has been named British Press Awards International Journalist of the Year 7 times. He's currently Middle East correspondent for The Independent of London. His previous books include Pity the Nation, The Abduction of Lebanon, and The Great War for Civilization, The Conquest of the Middle East. His latest is a collection of his essays and articles from The Independent. It's called The Age of the Warrior. Robert Fisk joins us here in New York in our Firehouse studio. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thank you, Amy.
Well, you're traveling through this country in the midst of a major crisis and a war abroad. Talk about your observations.
Well, I suppose the first thing is how similar the two things are. I mean, first of all, the Europeans were constantly advising more banking regulation in case they got infected by any economic crisis in the United States. This had to be a free market. Deregulation totally. In other words, once more, the United States did not listen to its foreign partners and allies on economic issues this time. Number 2 is rushed into a quick fix for a rescue bailout without any really serious planning, like crossing the Tigris River without a plan for post-war Iraq. And 3, it's the little people who get hit, the little Iraqis in the hundreds of thousands who've died, and of course, poor Americans for the most part who join the Marines or the reservists because they want to have a university education. They end up in Iraq and they get killed. The little people, once more, are the people who are getting hit. They're very parallel things, in my view. I can see it all the time.
And, of course, here in this country, as a number of U.S. casualties have declined, so has the attention in the media or in the public to the situation in Iraq, and everyone is now bought into the thought that things are getting better.
Yes, look, the degree of ethnic cleansing that actually took place, genocidal in some ways, and the fact that the Americans have now built walls through every community in every major city in Iraq, which is divided between the communities, means that there isn't, in fact, any free flow of movement. There isn't a country operating anymore. But now, I mean, if you stand back a little bit and look at it like this, first of all, we went to Afghanistan, we won the war. Then we rushed off to Iraq and won the war. Then we lost the war in Iraq, or maybe we won it again, and then we're going back to Afghanistan, where we seem to have lost the war, to win it all over again, and in due course, perhaps we'll have to go back to Iraq. I mean, in my reports, I'm calling this Iraqistan. And now we've actually got soldiers on foot turning up in Pakistan. I mean, has nobody actually stood back and say, what on earth are we doing out there? I mean, I calculated for our Sunday magazine that we now have 22 times as many military personnel per head of population as the Crusaders had in the 12th century. You know, what are we doing? It was a baker in Baghdad who asked me this very obvious question. He said, why are you meaning Western military, why are you in Kazakhstan and Tajikistan, French air base at Dushanbe, running close air support for the British in Helmand province, Afghanistan? Why are your people going into Pakistan? Why are you in Afghanistan and Iraq? Why are you in Turkey? Why are you in Jordan and Egypt and Algeria? US Special Forces have a base outside Taman Rasset in the southern Sahara. Why are you in Bahrain? Why are you in Oman? Why are you in Yemen? Why are you in Qatar, biggest US air base? I didn't have a reply, but I was struck when I was having lunch on the West Coast a few days ago by a very educated lady sitting next to me saying that the Muslims wanted to take over the world and they'd already taken over France. I mean, how does this happen? I mean, she might have told me that Martians had landed in New Mexico for all the thing you could do to counter that kind of argument. It looks like somehow we're on a brainwashing trip and we've all bought the narrative. You know, we even have Mrs. Palin talking about victory in Iraq. It doesn't feel it if you go to Iraq. It doesn't feel it if you live there. You know,
she also has talked about Iraq as being God's war.
Yeah, well, we've had several generals who've talked about that too, haven't we, and kept their uniform on in church when they said it. You know, more and more, I look back on the early statements by bin Laden, statements we never actually read. The narrative is always, is this bin Laden when he appears? Is he ill? When did he make the statement, and have the CIA confirmed it's his voice? What his voice actually says is never of any interest to us. But if you remember, he went on and on and on about crusaders, and he actually made a very important statement before we invaded Iraq, in which he called upon Muslims in Iraq to collaborate with Ba'ath Party officials against the Crusaders on the grounds that Salah ad-Din collaborated with the non-Muslim Persians against the Crusaders in the 12th century. We missed all this, and this was the detonation that set off the insurgency.
I'd like to ask you, at the debate, the presidential debate last Friday, we had the situation where the so-called candidate of peace, Barack Obama, is talking about, well, we took our eye off the ball in Afghanistan, as if this is a game here that's being played, and we made a mistake in the game, and so now we must go back to Afghanistan and possibly even into Pakistan.
Look, I think you have to realize, and the Arabs do not, and I've been trying on Al Jazeera Arabic service to say this, it's not going to make any difference who is the next president of the United States as far as Southwest Asia and the Muslim world is concerned. I was in Qatar, actually, in the Al Jazeera Arabic studios when Obama made his famous Middle East trip. You know, he gave 45 minutes to the Palestinians, 24 hours to the Israelis. And the Arabic anchorman turned to me and said, so, Robert, do you think Obama will win the election? I said, he'll win the election for the Israeli Knesset. I don't know if he's going to get the presidency of the United States. You know, we've got here a one-track policy into the Middle East by the United States, and it's not going to change.
But, Robert, is that true? On the one hand, you have, yes, they don't sound that different when it comes to